Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the November 12th, 2020 Public Safety Committee meeting. We have one topic on today's agenda, and that's the update on the circuit court operations. We're going to hear from the courts and from the sheriff. We have a series of questions that Ms. Susan Farag, once again, has developed a very comprehensive and thorough packet for us. And this morning, and she has 5 discussion issues listed. But then this morning at the Criminal Justice Coordinating Commission, this also known as the CJCC, there was one of the questions came up about the scheduling of jury trials because of the new executive order from the county executive and from the governor's executive orders, and how that's going to affect, if that's going to affect the jury trials as well. So with that, unless my committee members have anything to add, we're going to turn to Ms. Farag and ask her to please lead us through the packet.
Good morning, everybody. The chair covered almost everything that the meeting is going to be structured as today. I was hoping to get some buy-in from the participants as far as how we will proceed today. If it would be possible to support operations update, and then the sheriff can go into his part with court security, court support if necessary. And then at the end, if we could get to the MDEC discussion. Courts have been very challenged.
Just so everybody understands what MDEC is, that's the Maryland Electronic Courts system. Okay.
Right. And so the courts are very busy and they've been undergoing this transfer to a statewide.
Susan, you're fading in and out with your voice a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
That's better. Yeah, it's like one of those ads, but that's better. Yeah.
And my internet says it's unstable, unfortunately.
Okay.
So the courts have been dealing for the past several years with transferring over to a statewide electronic case system called MDEC. So that's added a complication to court operations already. And then of course, everyone got sidelined by COVID. The courts closed in mid-March. And so initially it was openly very, very bare bones emergency operation. And since my internet's not so well, I'll turn it over to Ms. Roop and Judge Greenberg if they'd like how COVID has impacted court operations.
Okay, thank you. Judge Greenberg, please.
Good morning. Let me begin, and Judy and I have a lot of information, and I think we're going to split this presentation, but obviously the world has turned over a couple of times since we were last before this committee. And in June, Judge Barbera, the Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals, propounded a new phased-in schedule for reopening. And there were 5 phases to the plan. We've, of course, never really closed. We were always open for certain emergency matters, but beginning in June, we commenced the second phase, which was a gradual reintroduction to people into the courthouse. We had only partial staffing. We heard many matters remotely, just as we're doing now, and that has continued. And in fact, as I think Judy will be telling you in a moment, it's a rather robust regimen that we have now of remote hearings, which has served everyone very well. And I think we've gotten some very favorable feedback, not just in our court, but throughout the state. The more serious stuff started in phase 4. In phase 4, which ended on August the 31st, it was anticipated that we would really be back to full operations with the exception of jury trials. And we have limited the number of people coming into the courthouse. We've made a conscious effort to reach out to our justice partners, including the state's attorney's office, public defender, members of the bar, and the public, by means of regular town hall meetings, reminding them that there are many services we can provide to them remotely, even insofar as copying of files, those sorts of things. So what has become of concern, of course, was October 5th it was anticipated we would begin throughout the state reintroducing jury trials in both civil and criminal cases. And we have been very successful in that. I think we've had 13 or 14 jury trials, both of a civil nature and criminal nature. We had a great deal of outreach to the community, including through media. We were on TV, showing the public what it would look like when they were summoned for jury duty. We even went so far as to film a short 5-minute or so video that a summons juror would be able to look at on our website and to reassure him or herself when they came into the courthouse that we were looking out for them. We've had very good feedback from members of the public regarding the safety precautions that we took. We have 4 courtrooms that are specially outfitted with extensive plexiglass, sanitizers, social distancing, and those sorts of things. But we, of course, kept a very wary eye on what's going on in our community. In fact, Judge Barbera, in her original order, gave each individual administrative judge the authority to scale back operations if needed in that particular jurisdiction. Well, now, even as we speak, we are awaiting an order from Judge Barbera that I'm told will be issued this morning. And I am fully anticipating that one of the components of that new order is that we're going to be scaling back operations, and to go back to phase 4 would mean that we are not going to be doing jury trials. We've become increasingly concerned, as I said, about the community outbreak. Although our building has been a pretty healthy one, and we haven't had any instances of community outbreak within our building, we're really getting very wary. And so I can't give you any more information because I don't know it yet, but every indication is that this morning the chief will be coming out with an order consistent with what's recently happened in the federal courts, what's happened in the state, and of course in our county. And of course, another procedural obstacle, even if we were not to be cutting back on jury trials, would be the recent order of the county executive limiting gatherings to 25 people. So it's be very difficult to select juries, especially in criminal cases, with only 25 persons. So I wish I could give you more information. You know, we may be off by maybe an hour. We may have it by then. But for right now, I think what's going to be happening is we're going to be cutting back even further on the services that we're able to offer. Now, that being said, I do want to tout my staff and the wonderful job that they did in rolling this reintroduction to the community of our court out. And some of the things are highlighted. You can read them as well as I can, but one of the things that we had to do, since we're not an MDEC county yet, is to devise our own electronic filing system, which has worked fabulously well. We've developed procedures and protocols for remote access to all of our proceedings from people who wanted to listen to any particular cases. We've maintained a pretty robust family law self-help center. We're helping people who don't have counsel to navigate their way through the court system in family cases. And we've maintained our drug and mental health courts as well, which is another important feature. But other than that, I can't give you any more information about what even tomorrow is going to hold, because I think we're going to get some fairly momentous decisions within the hour or hours from Judge Barbera. I'm going to turn it over to Judy because I know that she wanted to talk to you about remote proceedings, which is going to be, I think, even more essential now that it looks like we're going to lose some capacity to have people coming in here for in-person hearings.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Ms. Rubin, welcome, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for inviting us to provide an update. As Judge Greenberg mentioned, we have been asked to sort of recreate the court, similar to how you've recreated counsel in a Zoom environment with remote proceedings. We needed to continue operations, and so it gave us an opportunity to really rethink. There's about 99 different matters, different types of proceedings that we conduct. We've moved 57 of those into a remote posture. So when we started this in June, we were hovering about 217 different Zoom meetings in a month. We're up to almost 1,900 Zoom meetings a month, and it offers our patrons ability to have a convenience that they didn't have before. So instead of having to take a day off to come in for a 10-minute uncontested divorce where everything is already agreed upon, and it's a half-day process, they could virtually be in their car getting their divorce. So there is a lot of, as Judge Greenberg said, positive feedback we've received by moving some of these status hearings, scheduling hearings, simple matters into a remote posture that we see we will continue into the future. So what that brings, as you have experienced, I'm sure, is a lot more logistics on the front end. In order for you all to have started this meeting, a lot of people did a lot of work, and the court is experiencing that as well. So the scheduling of matters, those 1,800 matters have to be scheduled. A number of these have to be done in our family area where we don't have contact information. And so we're having to reach out to about 200 people a week to try to get a text message or an email address where we can send the link to. Additionally, conducting hearing, even an uncontested matter remotely, requires a level of facilitation where only those permitted are allowed in. If it's a juvenile matter, it's confidential, and you have to be very careful who's observing, who's seeing. Witnesses can't be brought in. We have interpreters, we have exhibits, we have documents to share, and there's something as simple as, Your Honor, may I approach the bench? And a real quick conversation becomes, let's move everyone out of the main room into a break room so that only those people that need to talk to the judge are in the main meeting, so we can capture that on the record. And so we continue to make a digital copy of what's happening. So there's a lot that has to do with not only the scheduling and the facilitation that we've experienced that we did not do at all before. And so we have begged, borrowed, and stole a lot of people from the courthouse to do that. Before we started jury trials, we'd steal people from our jury office, our law librarians, our custody evaluators, and we just were cobbling it together. We see that this is something that's going to be COVID related in the short term throughout 2021 and long term as we offer service of the court remotely into the future. And so that's why we see that the court needs to respond to remote proceedings in a formal way. We can't just continue to have 2 people on this day and 3 people on this day, help facilitate these proceedings. So that's the position the court never thought we would be in. I'm sure you hear that a lot at the beginning of 2020. And we're acknowledging that this is something that will need to go forward through COVID and then into the future. We're learning a lot. We're trying to streamline. We're trying to get as efficient as possible. But it still is a very labor-intensive procedure to get 1,900 Zoom sessions scheduled for a particular month.
Thank you. Let me ask you, first of all, I think I have 1,900 Zoom meetings today, and it seems like one of those days. But that's an unbelievable number. You got my attention when you mentioned that number. How much of a problem has it been if somebody does not have the technology to participate remotely?
That's a great question. What we did do is we set up 3 different viewing stations here at the circuit court, so that anyone who doesn't have the technology can come to the court. We have technical services available to help assist them. They sit behind a computer, it automatically opens Zoom, and so they can participate in their proceeding here at the court if they don't have the technical means to do so on their own.
And thank you. And one of the discussion issues that Ms. Frog had suggested that we just talk about was the court was seeking 7 new positions to assist with remote proceedings and scheduling. How has that happened? Has that happened? And will this be contractual or permanent positions? And if permanent, how does the court envision their duties after COVID-19 remote proceedings end?
So right now we are using 7 people to do this work. We are working right now to bring some contractual, and the recommendation from the court is that we would continue contractual through the end of this fiscal year, just so that we can learn what our future resourcing levels would need to be, and that we would be able to look at the FY22 budget to try to formalize this function. We're hoping that by, as we get into February, March, we really will have a better understanding of those 57 different types of proceedings that are happening remotely, how many will remain, and then we would be able to adjust resources accordingly to get that number down as much as possible. But we're really looking at, the court has done all of this on our own. And we know that our budget will only sustain this through the end of this the end of this calendar year.
And in that same discussion or same idea, how's overtime been modified? How does that work?
So we haven't had to use extensive overtime in the circuit court. Our operations, the emergencies go 24/7, but most of our operations happen during business hours, and we've been able to move staff around from closed offices like the jury lounge or the jury office. We've been able to move those staff around to help so that we didn't need to go into an overtime posture.
Good. And the circuit court took approximately $500,000 savings during the county's FY21 savings plan. 2 of the items included a lapse of a senior IT specialist and lapse of a business analyst IT project manager. How has lapsing these positions impacted your operation?
So the senior IT specialist was one of our COBOL programmers who retired. MDEC hasn't happened yet, so that position has not impacted operations. The business analyst IT project manager has impacted. We're overworking our IT staff. They're doing things that they didn't have to do before with monitoring court proceedings that are on Zoom. And so it's just an overwork situation, but it really hasn't significantly impacted us yet.
Thank you. And I'm going to turn to my colleagues, but let me just thank Your Honor and Ms. Roop for everything that everyone is doing in the courts, whether they're sitting on the bench or working behind the bench to get us through this unbelievable situation that we're in. And we, of course, stand ready to help in any way that we can. If we have enough money to help with the resources, we certainly stand to help out as best we can. And with that, Councilmember Albernas.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. And I know Sheriff Popkin probably has some opening comments as well. So I can wait until after those, but I'll start on a lighter note. I want to assure the millions watching at home that my 3 colleagues on the Public Safety Committee did not text each other to coordinate what we were going to wear today.
I thought the same thing. I really did. Yeah. But you guys look so much better than I do. I don't understand how that works. But anyhow, go ahead.
So Sheriff Popkin, if you wanted to make some opening comments or had some thoughts, I'm happy to wait, because I have questions that probably cross over into your jurisdiction as well, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Council Vice President Hucker, are you
happy to wait? Happy to wait. This is very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheriff Popkin, they know that you're going to have so much of importance to tell us that everybody's willing to wait. So please. Go.
Well, Cindy, I thought I was in uniform this morning, but looking at the 3 of you, I'm actually out of uniform. So
absolutely. We'll send you demerit. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Vice President Hucker, Councilmember Albernas, President Katz, I appreciate the opportunity to have just a little bit discussion on COVID and the courts and how it has affected the sheriff's office and the court operations in general. I will say, as I always tell you, I am certainly looking forward to meeting in person again someday, and I hope that does occur soon. President Katz, I've been keeping you updated for sheriff's office staff. As you know, the sheriff's deputies have been, our functions have continued since day one. So although there's been some less work involved with some of our functionality, certainly the emergency orders that take place at the Family Justice Center, that has never changed. Things have continued. But as I would like just to kind of just give you a brief overview, because I think it's important from an operational perspective, just kind of where in the 9 months or 8 months since COVID hit in the middle of March, how it's affected our staff. So far we have had 71 quarantined. 6 of those have been positive cases. We currently, as of today, we have 4 sheriff's deputies that are quarantined. 7 deputies currently are out on immunocompromised status, and 2 of them are currently out on EFMLA status. So if you add the numbers up, you can see how it affects staff considerably, quickly, with 4 currently quarantined, 7 out on immunocompromised, and 2 out on EFMLA. That's 13 sheriff's deputies that are out, not actually in the office. They cannot participate based on their current health status. So I thought that was just kind of important. I have been keeping you updated as this is kind of going on. And over the last several months, certainly my staff has seen what the community has seen over the summer months with less positive, less quarantines. But literally over the last 4 weeks, there has been, as the community has seen a significant increase, we have seen that as well. So I just wanted to make sure that Public Safety Committee was up to those numbers. Those are current. I have just a few brief slides to show you reference some of the things that Judge Greenberg and Judy were discussing this morning. I do want to mention before Susan puts those slides up that I can't say enough good things about Judge Greenberg and Court Administrator Judy Roop for the leadership and the superb work that they have done. This has been a monumental task to be able to reopen the court and allow people to come back into this building. It really was a reimagining the way business is done, but having people in person doing it. So really tremendous what they have done. And I also want to just say that I truly appreciate the work of Ms. Farad. She has again met with us and understands the operations associated with all of this COVID stuff. So I want to just thank Susan. So Susan, if you can try to put those couple slides up, I would appreciate that.
Okay, I've actually sent them over to our IT person. If Michelle would be able to share the slides, that would be great.
And Councilmember Katz, I do want to just say that some of this is in reference, but some of this will be changing.
Absolutely. Thanks.
So the first slide that you see is basically how the courts have reimagined the courtroom. What used to be 12 people sitting next to each other for jury duty has changed. That was required for social distancing. The courtroom had to be kind of turned around the other direction to be able to use the structure of the courtroom. You'll see in the slide that there's significant plexiglass that's up in many areas to protect all the participants that come into the courtroom on a daily basis. What you don't see that I would have had to take many angles is technology that is used to also bring people into the hearing remote, evidence that is being shown as well. So if you would have seen a courtroom prior to this reimagining, which I know you have, all of you have, this was an incredible endeavor to make sure that the social distance when people do come in for jury trials and for other hearings, that the public is safe. Judge Greenberg mentioned the video that was put out for an educational purposes. That's why I thought it was important, again, as the public is watching this, to see all of the work that was put forward to make these courtrooms and other areas within the courthouse a safe place for the public to come for their civic responsibilities. Okay, you can go to the next screen. So as a result of also of what other operations had to occur, is that as of right now, and again, this is likely to change, Judge Greenberg had limited the number of people that could come in this building at any given time on any given day to 150 people. Now that included the number of people on jury duty that would have to come in to select juries, and then all the other hearings. The sheriff's deputies would not normally be assigned to the doors, but to make sure that every person had their temperature taken, they're questioned at entry screening forms that the court approved, and we have a verifying docket and a visitor list that is provided to us every single day, which was another incredible partnership between us and the courts to have a list of people that are coming in the courthouse on a daily basis. And as a result of that and assigning to the sheriff's deputies to the entrance to the courthouse, we make sure that every person coming in has had no issues with COVID. And literally as of yesterday, we've only had to turn one person away that had some positive results to some questions that we asked for the screening. In the lower picture that you see a sheriff's deputy standing up there. That is actually the viewing area. Defendants who are on trial have a right to a public hearing, and because of the number of people between the jury trials, the attorneys, the court personnel that it takes to run any sort of hearing, the court had to come up with some alternatives, and that was referred to as a viewing station. So in a way, a social distance area, the viewing stations are now in the hallways where sheriff's deputies are assigned, because sometimes it's bringing together opposing parties to these hearings, but it allows for the public to continue to see these hearings and to make sure that the defendant has their rights to a public hearing. And that's what that lower picture shows. You can go to the next screen. So from within my office, we actually had to, hold on one second, let me just get this off. Okay, in my office, we had to, for informational purposes, roll calls. We actually had to separate those into different areas of the courthouse. We had to limit the number of people who go into locker rooms at one time. From between us and the Montgomery County Police, you're looking at something like close to 1,500 officers that have to be trained on in-service training. That's the regulations in the state of Maryland have not changed. We still require those, and to remain certified as police officers, you have to attend this. So we had to make that an online process. So all in service now has gone to mostly an online process. That's another thing that we reimagined. Judge Greenberg has required that masks, temperature screenings, and a CDC screening form be done every single day. That's anyone who comes in this building, to include the employees. And what we have been able to do is our deputies who work in pairs, in twos. We've been able to try to keep them separately by driving separate vehicles. If you can go to the next screen, which should be the very last one. So as you know, because I'm sure you have heard from the Department of Corrections, keeping inmates that are grouped in a detention facility with low numbers of COVID have been an enormous responsibility, not only from the county, but within the courts. I would certainly compare our record anywhere else in the country. Angela Talley, the director, has done a magnificent job and has worked very closely with me and the courts on a daily basis to make sure that this continues. We are transporting only in vans, if at all possible, because it keeps the inmates separate. We also keeps the inmate away from the deputies to keep them separate. So we're trying to maintain social distance. Social distance when moving inmates is not a very easy thing to do. The vans, because there's often people that are potential positives, they are regularly have to be decontaminated. So the next time we do a transport, somebody is not contaminated by somebody who was just previously in there. The way that we have worked with the Department of Corrections is that any new arrestee that comes in through central processing that ends up does not get transported up to MCCF until they've completed a 14-day quarantine, and then all of those inmates are transported up about 20 to 30 at a time, and we make sure that all of them are social distanced when we bring them up to MCCF. And that is why the numbers of positive cases up at the correctional facility has, knock on wood, has stayed tremendously low in that way. Interesting enough, we did take an inmate out to the hospital just a few days ago, and when he got to the hospital, immediately everyone who comes into the hospital is tested, and he was positive when the hospital tested him. So that resulted in him going into a floor that is only COVID patients in the hospital. He was guarded by the sheriff's deputies in the hospital and has now returned to MCCF and has been specially segregated there because he is currently positive up there. So that is just a very brief overview of our sheriff's operations during COVID, and certainly will be available for any sort of questions. And thank you for the opportunity to do this quick review.
Thank you, and thank you for all that you and all of everyone else is doing, and we sincerely appreciate all of your work. And I did want to mention that Assistant Sheriff Chris Calantonio is here as well. First off, on this slide, you're talking about the 14-day quarantine, and I think it should be noted that they're decontaminated at 7 Locks Garage Road, so they stay there, is what that is saying. Am I correct in that?
So the vans are usually here in the courthouse, but what happens after each transport, especially on these large ones, after the quarantine are over, the vans get decontaminated. So they're brought over to the facility on 7 Locks Road, the maintenance facility, and there is a company in there that provides that sort of service to make sure that the next transport of an inmate, which could literally happen an hour later, is safe and clean, and to make sure that there are no issues going from one person to the next. But it has been quite an undertaking.
I can understand that. And Sheriff, the approximately $275,000, you touched on this a little bit, $275,000 in savings during the FY21 savings plan included a reduction in the number of recruits expected in the January 2021 recruit class. And how is that going to impact you for the upcoming year?
Well, Sydney, thank you for asking that question. This is an ongoing discussion that I will continue to have with the Public Safety Committee. This falls in line with the fact that you can go past that slide and move on. We have 9 sheriff's deputies that are going to be retiring on the drop program in FY22. So it is an ongoing calculation to make sure that we do not fall behind. And I am working closely with Susan as well as the Office of Management and Budget to make sure those numbers are going to be accurate. I think in this coming class for January, we are likely going to be able to put 4 in that class, because in the last class, we were supposed to put 4 in and I lost 2. So I know this is kind of a puzzle piece and it's a moving target, and we continue. And as always, I will keep the Public Safety Committee updated on this kind of moving target. And as we get into budget season, which is, I believe, hopefully, maybe we can do that in person, but it may be a Zoom as well. I should know better a little bit more as we get through the next few months.
Very good, and thank you. And for both you and the court, what other fiscal and operational challenges are you facing due to COVID? Is there anything else that we should be having on our radars to discuss?
I think we touched on everything. Certainly we are, as Judy mentioned, we are doing our best to keep overtime at a minimum. Based on the number of people that I have out, which is, almost 15 people currently, I can't eliminate it, but we are doing our best to do that. One of the slides that I had Michelle just go through, because I know the council and I know Councilmember Hucker is very interested in this. The evictions, I don't want to really get into too much on this because this council hearing has nothing really to do with evictions. However, it is COVID related. I just wanted to let the Public Safety Committee know that there was 175 evictions that were canceled as a result of COVID. So those 175, once the moratorium was lifted, got rescheduled. The last one of the 175 is scheduled for December the 4th. We did get 27 writs of restitution, eviction writs that came in during the month of October that have been scheduled, but most of the people on all of these, the current evictions, have either moved out or have worked out or resolved. So I have evictions scheduled through December the 4th. There's not many. There's only less than 5 per week between now and December 4th, and we do not do evictions the week of Thanksgiving. The CDC moratorium on evictions expires December 31st, unless Governor Hogan puts something back into it, or incoming President Biden extends that CDC moratorium. Evictions will again be up and operating functionally as it has been in the past, pre-COVID, effective January 1. And I think that's an important subject matter because we are all trying to limit the potential during this public health emergency of anyone, being evicted and being potentially homeless. So I just wanted to make sure the council was aware of this. And I know that the council has been very involved and engaged on this topic and has provided considerable funding for emergency purposes on these evictions. So that's kind of where that stands. I just can't predict what will happen as we move into a new president for extensions, but we will see. And Governor Hogan's current newest order doesn't have anything with evictions on it. So.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ruth, did you have anything else?
No.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Albornoz, we'll turn to you then, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess, well, that's sobering, obviously. And I do think maybe a friendly suggestion is as a follow-up that we have a joint committee session, maybe with HHS and probably Fed too, on the eviction issue, because I know it's looming, and I think there's a lot of planning going in, but I think it would be helpful for the council to know the other components of that strategy and see what we can do to help. So let me just begin by just acknowledging and thanking all 3 of you and your teams. I have a family connection to a circuit court judge who has let me know about the incredible efforts that have been underway at the staff level and all the way up and down. And so it really has been Herculean. I have one just random general question that I'd like to ask. Was there a playbook for something like this? Was there any plan that you were all able to draw from in terms of emergency management that has at all been helpful? Or are we understandably having to develop a playbook here now?
If I can respond to that, there's an emergency operations statewide playbook, but it did not contemplate the severity of this pandemic. I will say that there have been regular meetings among the circuit court administrative judges throughout this proceeding, throughout the 7 or 8 months. And I think also on an administrative level, Judy has participated in them as well. We exchange ideas with our colleagues from across the state. For instance, with regard to the jury trials, we had a committee formed that made recommendations as to what that should look like. So it wasn't as though we cobbled this together all by ourselves, but of course every jurisdiction is unique. And so there had to be little added modifications made to those plans. But it was really remarkable how all of the members of the bench throughout the state and also administrative and court clerks got together to talk about these problems. And I think it really assisted us in rolling this out.
And I think that's important because one thought I had as you were describing in your presentation is, God forbid 2 years from now, somebody appeals a case claiming that they were given some disadvantage through their trial because of the unique technology and circumstances. But as we collectively work with other jurisdictions, and obviously every state in the country is experiencing this right now. So I think, it's good to hear that there's that level of coordination. And with that, we're keeping our fingers and toes crossed that there will be another round of federal stimulus. And I do think that it would be more than appropriate for us to consider helping support any technology solutions or capital improvements that have had to have been made to make sure we stay ahead of the curve. We are, as we all know and have been reading, the numbers are not looking good and they're going in the wrong direction. And I think we can all anticipate that there will be further closures over the next couple of months. And unfortunately, having to all the progress that has been made is going to have to be scaled back. So I would encourage all of you to not be shy or bashful. And I know Susan is outstanding in being proactive and reaching out to all of the key stakeholders that report to the Public Safety Committee. But this to me would be a tier 1 priority. Because it does have so many implications across the board. And obviously it can't really cover personnel because these funds have an expiration date, but they have been especially effective in short-term solutions, particularly around technology. Technology then could become a long-term solution. The second question I had is, on the positive front, there have been a lot of silver linings within the pandemic. On the council, we're seeing a record number of people sign up to testify for our hearings, which is terrific. We're seeing a record number of people who may speak English as a second language who would not normally come to testify. And I think this has presented some additional options for the council, just as one of many examples that could end up being positive as a result of this. Have you seen some things similar within our court structure and system that may live beyond the pandemic, some best practices that have emerged? And that question goes to all three of you.
If I can jump in here as well, there is a silver lining for us, as slight though it may be. We have discovered that we needed to be dragged into the 21st century technologically. And as a result, as Judy mentioned earlier, scheduling hearings, status hearings, even non-contested divorces can be held not only by Zoom, but by telephone. When there's no problem with a judge looking at the credibility of a witness, everybody agrees on certain issues. There sometimes doesn't even need to be what we are now experiencing in a Zoom hearing. So we're going to carry those forward. I'll give you an example. We would get calls frequently from attorneys from Baltimore, didn't want to come from a scheduling conference. Well, I'm sorry, you have to be here. We don't want them here now. And it's much greener. It's much more efficient. And I think we're much leaner. I will also say that many of the attorneys have made concerted efforts to resolve these cases. So our criminal backlog, which we feared would just be phenomenal, is really not much of a backlog at all because people got together, they resolved cases, we expanded the universe of judges before whom pleas could take place, and a lot of the cases that would have been trials ended up in pleas. So there really have been some economies of scale that we've experienced, and I think hopefully when the pandemic ends, we'll have them going forward.
Great. Sheriff Popkin, any silver linings that may carry over into the future?
That is a great question, and no doubt. Our silver lining, I always thought that our internal communication within the sheriff's office was good, but it's way better now because we're not relying on having to figure out times that we can all come into the same room together and discuss things. So we are talking way more frequently. We're communicating better. The messaging between sections and locations and buildings, it's just better. I mean, we are better for that. The other thing that we were certainly behind on, but now I know it can work, is the ability for my non-law enforcement people to be able to telework. So when the traffic on 270 is much less than it is when it goes back to pre-COVID levels, I can take some of those cars off the 270 corridor because they can continue to work from home because actually there are no distractions and they're doing really great work from home. So the ability to telework, which is something that we had really never jumped into much periodically, is now something that I know there's not only, that can be done, but can be done very, very well. So those are my two takeaways. And we're continuing to do that. And I'm sure between now and whenever this ends, there'll be more.
Appreciate that. And I'll just make another comment that how serendipitous it is that we have these beautiful new capital projects that have state-of-the-art HVAC systems, which, is one less issue that our circuit court has had to address or deal with. And there are other areas that have had to deal with that. So that's a positive. I don't have any other questions, Mr. Chairman. I think that this is, I've been impressed with this work. I think it'd be good to maybe get another briefing after this next inevitable wave, but also, and this is true of categories across the board, at some point, maybe a year from now, a lessons learned, so that we can keep a formal record of what has transpired and learn from our mistakes, but also expand those silver linings that we just talked about. So thank you.
Thank you. Good suggestions. And on your discussion about a joint committee with public safety and HHS, for those of you who don't know, Councilmember Alberniz is the chair of HHS. I know he needs other work to do, so that's why he was asking for that. But, if we, and that's fine, I'm certainly in support that. However, if we're going to go to 3 different joint committees, I think the incoming council president, who's also on this call, oh, by the way, is Vice President Hucker, you might want to schedule this for the whole council because we're pretty much involving anybody anyhow and to get an update. So anyhow, just another discussion. And with that, Vice President Hucker, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thanks. You both anticipated many of my questions, and Susan did in the packet. Thank you, Susan, for another great packet and all the work you do behind the scenes to keep us plugged in. And thanks to all of you for appearing today and for dealing in this, in such a highly competent way with really very difficult, challenging, and unpredicted, unplanned circumstances. Let me see what I have left. I crossed out 2, I crossed out 3, okay. Sheriff Popkin, thanks for the health update. I wanted to ask a lot of those questions. I also just wanted to get your more subjective sense of the morale of your staff. I noted the thorough, long email that Chief Goldstein had sent out to the FRS staff, encouraging them to, get enough rest and eat well and exercise and take care of themselves. I know your staff are dealing with, very difficult, challenging circumstances too. How are your staff holding up through this? are you going to see any increase in requests for early retirement or anything like that? Or have there been unforeseen circumstances that you're dealing with outside of the health metrics?
So the health metrics, I am fortunate in, again, this is one of Councilmember Albanaz's silver linings. As a result of the drop program over the retirement program that was negotiated a number of years ago, I've had probably more than 25% of my office retire over the last 4 years. So this has been an ongoing kind of numbers game to make sure that we have proper staffing. And those numbers, as I mentioned to President Katz, we will have 9 coming up in the FY22 budget. There'll be 9 additional people retiring. So, so as a silver lining to all this, I have been able to hire, and I have not seen a reduction in the number of people who really want to come work for the Office of the Sheriff. So that's a good thing. The other part of it is that I have a very young and healthy workforce. So even though I've had an awful lot of people who have been quarantined or who have been positive, fortunately, knock on wood, it has been relatively minor cases. No one has been in the hospital, and you know, I'm not belittling COVID because it is very serious, but fortunately, asymptomatic or minor cases. So from that perspective, having a young workforce, the COVID interactions have been relatively minor, other than the numbers. So on the other perspective, on morale, I think the morale difficulties in public safety is really from the challenge of kind of going on media on a daily basis, and it being a very challenging time under a number of reforms. And so if you hear every day because of certain messaging and narrative that public safety is, you know, are the police officers are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or they are, you know, the bad person in some incident, and you hear that constantly, you know, you start maybe feeling as you don't have enough support around you. So that comes from, you know, not only to make sure that we work in a positive way, that comes from our messaging, from me on down to all of my staff as well, to make sure that people do understand that there's support out there. You just can't believe everything you see on social media. You can't, you know, if you spend too much time on the news and on social media, you know, you can get to that morale point. But I think the communication really stems from, and the exceptional work. I've got 200 amazing, hardworking staff in my office, and they continue to do exceptional work. You know, morale is something that we always would like to have improve, but in general, I have not seen it as in general wide scale spectrum that the morale is not, you know, decent. But the combination of COVID fatigue, the combination of some things that sometimes you know, the constant what's hitting them in the face in media sometimes does get to the individual officers. But in general, the staff here have done just phenomenal work, and you'd never know otherwise.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate the slides. I had a lot of questions about your sort of COVID sensitive updates to the courthouse to sort of trick it out with the distancing and the circles and the plexiglass and all that. I assume you have similar protocols for elevator use and sanitization. And I was thinking the same thing Gabe was about the air exchange. Thank goodness you have a much more contemporary building than we do on that score. How is that? I'm under no illusion, though, that how many people are watching us every morning. How is that communicated, maybe Judy, to the members of the public who are asked to come in? Courtrooms are an intimidating place to go in the first place for most people. Do you have a flyer, or how is that communicated to people who might be nervous about showing up?
Yeah, we have, we reworked the website so that you can get to COVID mitigation that we've done and safety protocols. Judge Greenberg has been very forthcoming in putting out information that talks about the rigors of our retrofitting the courthouse. And then we did the Safe to Serve video, and anyone who's nervous about serving has an opportunity to watch that and have their fears allayed, that we have taken precautions. I'm looking right now at a spreadsheet. We spent about $77,000 in retrofitting the courthouse with sanitizing, social distancing. We also did a lot of information out to our employees before we welcomed our employees back, because they needed to be assured that their health and their well-being was our first priority. And so we did a lot of communication to our employees as well. Judge Greenberg did a great job speaking to employees and to members of the jury to see where we could improve what we were doing. And we have added additional hand sanitizing. We've met with facilities a number of times to get additional fogging done in certain areas that are really commonly used areas. We've asked Sheriff Popkin to work with additional sanitizing at the entry screening stations. So I know I'm rambling on, but
No. And then just to follow up, if you have essential participants like a witness showing up and they get the temp check, Darren said you only have to turn away one person, but then what happens? Is it just up to the judge whether you proceed or whether you postpone or do it remotely?
Mr. Vice President, so if someone is turned away at the door, they're provided with information as to how they can participate. For instance, if it were somebody who's represented by counsel and counsel is in the building, they're permitted to contact counsel. There's a link that anyone who wants to access a public proceeding can use on our website so that they could participate in the proceeding. Because occasionally we get people say, oh, I'm a courthouse watcher. Well, we can't let those people in, unfortunately, but
Right.
we give them the information. And if they're turned away, they're provided with like information. So it's not
Right.
like they're just told, go away, don't come back.
That's very helpful. And then finally, I really appreciate the conversation about the silver linings. You all know the cliche about challenges and opportunities and crises. I think that would be great, what Councilmember Alvernow suggested of having a sort of a real thorough review at some stage about what are best practices, and that would take probably, Mr. President, some staff work at a committee by committee level, because I really think we should, in a disciplined way, be looking what other jurisdictions are doing, what third-party groups have gathered about best practices, so that we're really in a position to improve coming out of this and take advantage of the lessons that have been learned, not just here, but everywhere. Anyway, that's what I have. Thank you all for doing heroic work on this. 1,900 meetings a month puts us to shame, as many as we think we are in. So keep it up and let us know what you need. Thank you.
I thought we could be in the Olympics. We're nothing compared to them. You know? Ms. Farag, do you have anything else to add?
No, I don't at this point.
Very good. Well, again, thank you all very, very much for everything you're doing. We appreciate it. We are here to help as best we can in any way we can. We're going to have continued dialogue, has been mentioned a couple times, and so if you run into problems that we have not anticipated, which it's not if, it's when you run into problems we have not anticipated, please let us know and see how we can help out with you as well. So with that, we are going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.